Hello, in this video, I would like to talk about the varying degrees to which cerebral palsy affects people and the potential psychological effects that this has. Now, cerebral palsy has many different degrees. Some people have mild cases where you may not even really notice that they have an issue. People may have more moderate cases in which issues are clearly present, and some people have more severe forms in which their physical abilities are very limited, and they may also suffer from cognitive issues as well. Now, the varying degrees of this problem can cause psychological effects in that if someone with cerebral palsy sees other people, maybe on the news or in their own personal life, having an easier time than they are because those people have a more mild form of cerebral palsy, it will probably be difficult for the person suffering from the more severe forms of cerebral palsy to cope with this. This is also why it may be hard for people with cerebral palsy to find people in their own peer group who not only suffer from cerebral palsy, but suffer from cerebral palsy in the same way they do. This doesn't even take into account the fact that on its own, cerebral palsy only affects 0.25% of the US population. So that number is already very small. And then to try to find people that suffer from cerebral palsy to the same extent you do is an even harder task. And the reason you may want to try to find people of your own disability level is because those people will suffer from the same challenges you do. For you to interact with people that have a lesser form of cerebral palsy or a more severe form of cerebral palsy than you yourself do is kind of, for lack of a better term, somewhat useless to you, because you will have completely different lives. And the fact that you have completely different lives has nothing to do with your personalities, whether it be how positive or negative you are. It simply, sadly, comes down to, in large part, how affected your brain has initially become due to the brain damage you suffered from cerebral palsy. Now, although this is a negative approach this is the most realistic outcome for somebody who is looking to socialize with other people that have cerebral palsy. This is why I believe it is best to not even attempt this, because even if you can't find people that have the same life experience you do, it may be best that you don't. It may be best to try to experience other people's lives through their own experiences, even if they are not your own. This comes to another point I made in another video in which I talked about disassociation. In those videos, I made the point that I do not believe disassociation is in itself a negative thing. I believe it has practical usages for people who suffer from severe disability. So, if you are struggling to find people in your disability peer group, know that it may not be necessary. Know that it is okay if you cannot do so, because the mind is very good at trying its hardest to adapt in such a way that you can function well enough that you will have the desire to not only be a social being, but on a more fundamental level, keep living your life.